evening. Hello and welcome to the brand new edition of Startup Central. I'm Nayantara Rai in New Delhi. This is a show only of its kind on Indian television, dedicated, of course, to startups, but entrepreneurship, technology, innovation, disruption, anything that has to do with the new economy. We'll get straight down to business, but before that, a quick programming alert. Write into us. Give us your feedback. Tell us what you want to see on the show, what you don't want to see on the show. You could maybe even pitch to us and have a chance to be on Startup Central. Our email address on your screen at startupcentral@etnow.tv. I'm also on Twitter. Write to me. My Twitter handle is @Nayantara Rai. Let's get straight down to business, and this is a big exclusive. What's it going to take for the marquee firm Temasek to invest in your business? That's what we're going to find out in today's masterclass with Temasek India's head, Ravi Lamba. Temasek, owned by the government of Singapore, now has a portfolio in India at a staggering $11 billion. This is the largest the Temasek portfolio ever has been in the country. It's also made investments in new age companies like Policy Bazaar, Zomato, and recently Ola. And here's the news. It's on the prowl for more of such investments. In fact, recently, Temasek International CEO Dylan Pillay said there will be more investments in private companies as opposed to public companies, with the idea of beating market volatility. So in this interview, you're going to find out what it takes for Temasek to get an interest in your firm. And worry not, even if your company hasn't reached the scale to attract a marquee player like Temasek, you will, for the first time ever, get insights into what you need to have interest from a company like Temasek. Information that has never been discussed on Indian television before. Here's an interview by my colleague, Avan Dubash.
We only just invested in Ola, and we believe in the long-term growth of the sharing economy in the country, and we are very positive on all of our investments in the sharing economy globally, not just here in India. And look, at the end of the day, we believe that management and shareholders need to be aligned to create value, and we do not see that differently in any of our investing companies actually.
You're a big player in financial services. In terms of the new age tech companies, what draws Temasek? What are some of the do's and don'ts that you keep in mind while investing in these companies?
It's the opportunity. It's the opportunity that you start looking at a very large addressable market, which either you're creating that never existed before, like in the sharing economy. You create an economy that never, a whole new industry, business model that never existed, or you're looking at a large addressable market that sits with what I would call legacy incumbent businesses that you're looking to disrupt. So when you look at a early stage company looking to disrupt a existing addressable market or creating a new market, it's always very exciting because for sure there's going to be growth. So then what defines how value is created is a matter of have you got the right management team behind it? Are you funding it appropriately? And then have you got the right kind of tools to execute that plan? It's investing 101 actually, and I think from our perspective, given where we are in the life cycle in India, when it comes to the startup ecosystem, we think it's in a very exciting phase.
Okay, so that's the checklist then from Temasek. Now there's been the DVR approval by the SEBI board, and at the end of the day, it is your money, and the founders say that their vision tends to get a bit hijacked. How are you looking at these regulations, the investment opportunity in India in light of these regulations?
So differentiated voting rights and different ways of governing companies that can get accepted into a listed stock market really do vary from country to country, right? So this is not a new development for us as we look at investing globally, where ultimately the solution is that investors and promoters have to be aligned on those direction they want to go. And as long as governance is aligned, as long as the direction objectives are aligned, it works. When there's no alignment, it doesn't work.
To get 80 more unicorns by 2025. Can you tell us a little bit about what opportunity you see here and how you really spot an early unicorn?
Well, first, I want that list of 80. I don't have it.
But by 2025.
Okay. Whether it's 80, whether it's 100, whether it's 50, doesn't matter. I think the point is, it's very important for us to stay focused on intrinsically what makes a company valuable. I talked a little bit about before about a very large TAM, a total addressable market. I talked about having the right solution for addressing that TAM. But I would say from an early stage approach, we look at it as a portfolio. We will win some and we will lose some, and some will be okay. But overall, we are targeting our investment in this early stage space to have a positive outcome. And we will go in small, and then we will increase our stake. We did that before as well. In China, for example, when we put capital into Alibaba, our first investment was very small. It was in the few tens of millions of dollars. And as we got more opportunity, we increased our stake, and we will do the same thing here. We'll try and pick winners. We'll try and back management. And
Is there any particular area that you guys are looking at the moment?
We're looking across companies that are tech-focused, tech-enabled, right? I think we like the digitization of the economy. That's very important as a long-term trend. We think as the economy digitizes in India, more opportunities will open up. So anything that's tech-enabled, tech-focused, that's looking at disruption, or whether it's looking at creating a solution, we will look at. So it could be in the financial services space, it could be in healthcare, it could be in broadly looking at technology across different sectors, like whether it's agri, or whether it's consumer, or whether it's just simply services, or it could be providing a more differentiated solution in the O2O space, which has been around for a while now. It makes it very interesting because, as you said, whether it's 80 or 50, I don't know, but there's so many more opportunities coming up that we just have to keep at it.
That's the masterclass with Temasek India. It's a big interview. Their portfolio at a record high of $11 billion. He sat down with my colleague Avan Dubash. Incidentally, she also quizzed him on the recent regulation by SEBI's board that's to introduce differential voting rights. What is that going to mean for Temasek-like investors? Of course, the idea by SEBI was to try and let the founders of technology startups carry on with their long-term vision. We will also get to edited excerpts of that part of the interview right here on Startup Central. But time now for the next news story. We've seen Paytm and Ola launch credit cards earlier this year. Now it's the turn of Flipkart, owned by the American giant Walmart. It today launched a virtual credit card co-branded with MasterCard as well as Axis Bank. Ladies and gentlemen, the trend is very much clear. We've had Paytm, Ola, and now Flipkart. India's top internet companies are making a beeline to cash in on India's underpenetrated credit card market. And why not? It's a massive, massive opportunity. I'm going to put that in context for you by quoting some data from the Reserve Bank of India. The market can be, right now, basically by the month of May, we had seen Reserve Bank of India say that India had nearly 49 million credit cards and 824 million debit cards. That's as per the data, according to the Reserve Bank of India, till May. Now, if I look at data from CIBIL, there are 220 million creditworthy Indians, and 1/3 of them have not been tapped by any formal financial institution. So out of these 220 million creditworthy Indians, only 72 million are seen as credit active. And then you wonder, why is it that internet companies are looking to make a beeline for virtual credit cards? Here's a report by my colleague Ishita Guha.
Axis Bank has come to cash in on well. You shoppers, it's what they call a virtual credit card. You don't need the plastic credit card, but just online account linked to your bank account. It's virtual, so it has to be quick too. Flipkart and Axis Bank promise to give consumers a virtual credit card in 180 seconds flat. America's largest brick-and-mortar retailer, Walmart, has roped in another American giant, MasterCard, for this foray into financial services. Remember MasterCard's tagline, "There are some things money can't buy, for everything else there's MasterCard." Well, MasterCard is taking that very seriously in India by fostering perhaps the first of many such relationships to the online world.
Number one, after organizing logistics, payments and commerce, today we are taking a bold step to partner with two very influential brands in organizing credit. Number two, this is the most seamless and superior technology experience the consumer internet will see in fintech. Number 3, we have a vision to increase access of credit to the Indian consumer and also increase affordability. Today, roughly 20+% of GMV on Flipkart's marketplace goes through some kind of an affordability construct. In the next 3 to 4 years, we actually want to take this number to more than 40%, more than double the affordability access to the Indian consumer.
The opportunity of MasterCard together with Axis Bank and Flipkart has been a true labor of love for our 3 organizations. And I was just talking to the team. It's almost a year that this partnership has been in the works, and we've been working together. And I'm just so delighted that the power of a phenomenal success story of India's growth story like Flipkart and what Flipkart has achieved in the e-commerce space with a really vibrant franchise like Axis Bank, with whom we've had a very long-standing, fruitful relationship, coming together to serve a very vibrant part of the India growth story is indeed a really exhilarating opportunity for us.
This opportunity for us represents tapping into what we call the new India. The aspirations of this new India are different. The aspirations, some of those aspirations have been set by players like Flipkart, who have actually demonstrated to this new India how you can provide instant service, a service which they were not used to before. And as Kalyan enumerated some of the principles on the basis of which Flipkart was set, we are also celebrating 25th anniversary of Axis Bank. And when we were also set as a bank initially when we started in corporate banking, but over the last 10 years, we have worked very hard to set up a retail franchise. And as we have set up this retail franchise, our focus till now has been actually going to our savings deposit customers and ensuring that we can actually offer credit to them.
Is this deal exclusive? Are Axis Bank and MasterCard free to shop with other e-commerce companies like Amazon?
Right now, if you look at it, out of the 2 biggest e-commerce players, I think Amazon already has a deal with another bank. Flipkart has been evaluating this particular side of the business for the longest period of time, and they went through a pretty detailed process in evaluating who could be the right partner, both the parties concluded that I think us coming together will make a lot of sense. We have spent a lot of time in the product proposition to ensure that it's not just that there are Flipkart is there. Flipkart has a lot of customers. We have a lot of customers that we just come together. As you saw from the presentation, the effort which has gone into ensure that this is best in class has been quite a bit. Not only in just the best product proposition, but also make the whole journey seamless and ensure that the experience for the customers is what they're used to on an e-commerce site like Flipkart. So we are hoping that this can jumpstart the whole carding and giving credit out to customers who have not used that much credit in the past, make the journey seamless, and at the same time reaching out to some customers who have never taken a credit card in the past. It also obviously jumpstarts our story on being a leader on the payment side of the business. So we're looking forward to the positive. I mean, it has taken a lot of time to get here, because through that journey, Flipkart also had Walmart coming and taking them over. And Walmart has been very supportive of this particular effort. So we are looking forward to this partnership.
And can we talk about shopping online without cashback? Obviously not. Flipkart is taking on competition by promising a 5% cashback by using this new virtual credit card. But where does that leave PhonePe? Remember, that's also from the house of Flipkart. Watch this space. Signing off from Mumbai, Ishita Duha.
Well, now you know why tech companies are also making a beeline for credit cards. A massive opportunity. Like we told you, only 1/3 of the credit-worthy Indians are being tapped by any kind of a formal financial institution. With that, we're going to take a short commercial break here on Startup Central. Tell us what you thought of what you've seen so far, the masterclass with Temasek, or the trend we spotted of internet companies and their beeline for credit cards. Write into us. Our email address is startupcentral@etnow.tv. You can also write into me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @Nayanthara. With that, we're going to take a short commercial break. We're going to make money, right? But on the other side, we're going to tell you what Ratan Tata, Axel, as well as Sequoia have in common? It's a gentleman that you see on your screen representing a startup which has just finished its Series D funding, a B2B commerce firm, Moglix. Coming up on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching the brand new Startup Central with me, Nayanthara Rai, in New Delhi. The only show of its kind on Indian television dedicated, of course, to startups, but entrepreneurship at large, technology, innovation, disruption, anything that has to do with the new economy. Stay in touch with us, folks. Write into us. Tell us what you liked on the show, what you didn't like, what you want to see, what you don't want to see. Try pitching to us and maybe you get a chance to be on Startup Central. Our email address is at startupcentral@etnow.tv. I'm also on Twitter, my Twitter handle there at the bottom of the screen. I'm going to now put the spotlight on a startup called Moglix. Now, Moglix seems to have a lot of marquee investors. Ratan Tata, Accel, Jungle, now even Sequoia Capital. In fact, we've got Moglix to our studio after it raised $60 million in Series D funding round. This funding round has been led by Tiger Global and Sequoia Capital, as well as Composite Capital. Moglix is a B2B commerce firm. It is a supplier of industrial tools like hand tools, power tools, electrical, safety equipment. Like I told you, it's already been backed by marquee investors like Ratan Tata, Accel, as well as Jungle Ventures. So let's now invite the founder right here on Startup Central. He's the founder and CEO, Rahul Garg. Thanks, Rahul, for taking the time out and joining us here. Congratulations. Series D funding that is out of the way. How much did you raise? What are you going to do with all of this money?
So firstly, thanks for inviting us to the show. This is definitely a significant amount of capital and endorsement that we have received, taking almost the funding that Moglix has raised close to $100 million. If you look at it, we started with a very simple mission. Can we reimagine B2B commerce with technology? We noticed back in 2015, the amount of innovation that has happened in the consumer commerce was far ahead of what has happened in the B2B space. And manufacturing sector, which is close to 18 to 20% of our GDP, is still not getting the best of the technology coming to their doorsteps. So Moglix starts to become a preferred partner for manufacturing companies, looking at how they can have the same kind of commerce experience being delivered at their doorsteps by one-stop Moglix as a shopping platform. This funding we are looking at in three different ways. We today are present in 14 major industrial hubs across the country, but we think that there are close to 25 to 30 major industrial hubs that we need to continue to expand our logistics and supply chain, and we are going to go after and make our presence felt in all of these locations. Second, we continue to work with a massive number of manufacturing plants as well as supplier ecosystem. Just to give an indication, today Moglix has powered more than 1,000 plus manufacturing plants which are across automotive sector, steel, mining, pharma, chemical. You name an industrial sector and we are serving them today. And this is only possible by having more than 5,000 plus suppliers, which might be coming from the likes of Chabdi Bazaar and Lohar Chawl in Mumbai. And we need to continue to invest into technology to enable this ecosystem to become efficient, automated, as well as delivering to the right customer experience.
Okay. But I want to ask you some other questions, Rahul. You've already obviously done something which has impressed a lot of investors, a lot of marquee names. So let me now lean on your expertise. And for any one of you entrepreneurs and startups watching, can you first tell me, you've been backed for someone like Ratan Tata. How did you even get in touch with Ratan Tata? How did that work? How did you pitch to him? Tell us how that one happened, and then we'll talk about, again, the Series D funding.
So I think we have been fortunate. When we started in 2015, B2B was not a very sexy space to start with, and combined with manufacturing, where not many startups have been built. So when we started with the simple mission, we want to reimagine B2B commerce and go after looking at how manufacturing and technology can come in one sentence. we felt that one person who was iconic to this was Mr. Tata. And we were fortunate to have some of our investors having him as advisor. So just to name here, Mr. Tata is a advisor on Jungle Ventures board. So we got an opportunity to present to him. It was a phenomenal experience just spending that 30 minutes presenting to him and talking about what we are trying to do and how we are bringing the technology and efficiency into a sector which he's very, very passionate about. And I believe that did the trick. So he wrote a check for us way before we were launched as well.
Rahul, you got 30 minutes. You got 30 minutes with Ratan Tata, primarily thanks to Jungle Ventures, which was already backing you. If you don't mind, and for everybody who's watching this show, can you tell us in those 30 minutes, did he cross-question you, the kind of stuff that he asked you, or do you think, Jungle had already done most of the work for you by pitching to him beforehand?
So I would say that I would be very, very humble spending that 30 minutes speaking to him about what we are building. And these are early days where I think India distribution was still in infancy, GST was nowhere in sight. And just talking about what we want to do with the sector, what we want to do on the distribution, I believe he was very engaged in the conversation. He talked about many of the different facets and challenges and opportunities that might come our way, and we kept on learning from that conversation and answering to the best of our ability.
Okay, so now, ladies and gentlemen, the street cred of Moglix is on your screens. Like I said, marquee names: Sequoia, Tiger, Axel, Jungle, IFC, to just to name a few of them. So Rahul, I've got to ask you this. What makes a good pitch? You obviously know the secret of making a good pitch. Good business model, granted, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make a good pitch, right? What makes a good pitch?
So I think pitch is the second portion of what you do. I think the first important question to ask is, are you clear about what is the space you want to go after, why you want to go after that space, as well as what is the problem that exists and what is the solution that you're going to go after. So I think having a clarity as an entrepreneur on all of those four elements is probably the most important question, because pitch is going to be reflective of the clarity of thought that you bring to the table and bring to that conversation, because you're going to have the 30 minutes, you may have at best 1 hour, and that is the time you got to make your intention and also impress upon the clarity you bring to the space and the problem you are willing to solve.
And, before I let you go, Rahul, I want to also ask you is, because you've done it and this is your D series, right? So having said that, when should one go in for funding?
So I think it's a very subjective question, because a lot depends on the space and what is the kind of scale that you're looking to build. In our case, we went for funding very, very early, because we realized if we were to transform the distribution sector in the country, we would need capital, and it cannot be happening without getting access to venture fund and helping us to build the right team, the right infrastructure that is required to go after the space. So I would say it depends on the space that you are going after, and therefore the idea, space, problem, solution probably should determine what kind of capital you should raise and when you should raise it.
I'm going to ask you my final question now. I've picked your brains on how it is that you managed to get the D series funding, what you did right. But with every success, there is usually at least one failure, if not a string of failures. So I'm going to make this my final question to all our viewers out there. You're being seen as a success story. What is it that you'll want to caution them against?
So I think there is two things which is very, very important for every entrepreneur to be true to himself, true to their stakeholders that are going to be investing with them or people that are going to work with them. Firstly, why you are doing it and why are you willing to bet a certain period of your life completely to go after that problem and solve it. And I think it is very, very important to remain true to that, because we see sometimes entrepreneurs might be swayed away by the glamour or the wave effect and might not be truly committed to the problem. Second thing, I think as you get funding, I think it is very, very important to remember funding is a means to get to an objective. It is not the objective. So we need to use this funds cautiously, and we need to go after solving the problem that we are passionate about.
All these marquee names, Rahul, and this is my final question to you. Everybody wants to be part of the coveted unicorn club. It's a lot based on valuations. Can you throw light onto, after today's funding, what your valuations are?
So it's not a public info. We are not a unicorn. Hopefully in next couple of years we can get there. But we are definitely doing our best efforts that we both in terms of adding value to our customers as well as value to our stakeholders, we get to unicorn in the coming years.
Rahul Garg, wish you all the very best from the team at Startup Central. That's Moglix for you, a masterclass of sorts. Look at the kind of names that he's been able to get on board as investors, whether it's an individual like Ratan Tata or Sequoia, Tiger. You saw the entire name there on the street cred of Moglix. Now, companies like Moglix also have to rely a lot on ESOPs. It's in fact the currency on the startup street. And there may be a bonanza on sorts. It's the biggest way to get employees to stick around. It's the best way to get good valuation. And it's also, of course, a retirement plan for all of these entrepreneurs and founding employees. There could be a bonanza of sorts in the form of taxation. What could it be? It's been a tall ask of the startup universe. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching the brand new Startup Central with me, Nayanthara Rai, in New Delhi. A 1 hour long show dedicated, of course, to startups, but also entrepreneurship, technology, innovation, disruption, anything that has to do with the new economy. Before I go further, tell us what you've been thinking of the show so far, any of the episodes you've seen. Tell us what you want to see, what you never want to see. Keep sharing your feedback with us. Our email address is startupcentral@etnow.tv. Pitch to us. Maybe you could even get a chance to be a part of the show. You can also write to me directly on Twitter, my Twitter handle at the bottom of the screen. We're now going to put the spotlight on a very burning issue when it comes to the startup universe. I'm talking about employee stock ownership, which is of course called ESOPs, employee stock ownership plans. It's been a burning issue because of the taxation reason. A lot of the founders want changes, a lot of the large corporations want changes, and the employees, of course, want changes. And it's not just because everybody wants to pay less tax, not for that, but for when the taxation on ESOPs should be levied, when it should be made payable. And according to the Economic Times report today, there are perhaps going to be a lot of changes that are going to come in as per the wishes of the startup universe. I'm sure you've all read that story. We'll be taking you through the highlights. But joining me to discuss that is Naganandan Doraswamy, the managing partner at Idea Spring Capital, Kshitish Shah, the principal for 314 Capital. We're also being joined by Vikas Vassal, the national leader for tax at Grant Thornton in India. And we convinced Moglix's Rahul Garg, the founder and CEO, to stay on for this conversation. He's the founder here. Perhaps he does use ESOPs. So gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us here, right here on Startup Central to talk about this issue. Because I'm going to lean on you first. You know, it's not a done deal as yet because nobody has signed. Is it a proposal stage just to make ESOPs a lot more lucrative? So, you know, you're the tax expert that we have on this panel. Your quote was also in the Economic Times story today. So, you know, break this down first of all for our viewers. What's at stake? How important is this? Vikas, can you hear me? Okay, Naganand, let me come to you. Naganand, you know, this has been a tall ask. Okay, so Vikas, I was asking you that your quote was also part of today's Economic Times story. There's been a strong demand to change the taxation rules for ESOPs. finally it looks like it has come on the radar of the government. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. You've just finished with the union budget by Nirmala Sitharaman, but it's a budget that focuses a lot on startups. This is an irritant of sorts. It's a currency on the startup street. What can we expect? What should be the changes made to make it a lucrative option?
I think we have to look at the basics of how the taxation system works for the startups. The whole premise is that we want employees to take up the ownership and participate in the growth journey of any startups. It's extremely difficult for the startups which are struggling with lack of funds to attract right talent. Therefore, stock option ownership plans, or ESOPs in short, are the right motive over there. Now today, the taxation triggers the moment employee exercises the options, which effectively means that he has to pay his tax as perquisite as soon as he converts his options by exercising his right and converts the options into shares. Most of the times, in case of startups and similar private companies, there are restrictive covenants because of which the employee is not able to sell his shares to anybody else. Secondly, there is no ready market in India for the stock options or such shares of private companies to sell it in the market. Therefore, there is a cash issue or liquidity issue for the employees, which effectively means in order to pay tax on the perquisites, either the person has to dig into his own savings, or he has to literally borrow the funds from outside to pay for taxation. Now tomorrow we do not know what finally happens to the company, whether its valuation goes up or goes down, and when the event will come when the person can actually sell the shares. Contrasted with a listed company, if a person has to get cash to exercise his options and pay for the taxes, the person can sell a part of his shareholding in the stock market. Whereas in case of startups or private companies, this liquidity is not available. Therefore, it's best that the event of taxability should get postponed and should get triggered only when an employee sells the shares. So I think that is where the dilemma lies. That's the reason most of the employees insist on cash salary rather than stock options.
Okay, so Naganand,
So
we've
that's
just
the
seen
root cause
Vikas
of
lay
the
the stage
problem.
for us from Grant Thornton. He's okay, so he's laid the stage for us. So now, Naganand, if I could come to you. First of all, put in perspective for us. We've seen a lot of millionaires and billionaires also being created because of ESOPs, especially at the time, of course, IPO. So having said that, can you first tell me how different are the rules in India when compared to the Silicon Valley?
Part of startups in the US before, not necessarily Silicon Valley. I was in Boston. The main thing is when somebody joins a startup, they're taking a salary cut. So if you start taxing them at the point where they've taken a salary cut to start, then it becomes a double whammy for somebody. So in the US, what used to happen was you used to excise the option, but you never used to pay any taxes at that point of time, and you would pay the taxes only when you actually made the money by selling the shares of the company. You used to buy early on so that you could pay long-term capital gains or short-term capital gains, but you never paid any tax at that point of time, and that was in startups. However, in publicly traded companies where you used to get ESOPs, then they used to have both non-qualified and ISO. There are two kinds of options that one could give, and there were different rules for that, but they were mostly basically you would pay the taxes when you actually exercised it. There was little nuances in there. But the issue with ISO was there was AMT that many people got hit with in both in startups and in large companies. So I think the key point to add to Vikas's what Vikas said is the fact that one needs to understand that when people join startups, they are taking a pay cut. So it is best not to add additional for them, and one should wait till they make money to tax it. And we're all agreeing that it is not necessary that it should not be taxed. But tax when you make the money, and that way the startup ecosystem will grow faster.
Okay, Kshitij, if I could now come to you. That's a case that's being said that when you see employees with startups, they're taking a salary cut. It's like I said, the currency at the startup universe also to prevent attrition, right? That's why, that's how you keep them. You retain your employees with the ESOPs. You dangle that carrot. But having said that, clearly, it's not, is it just about taxation? The problem is also different. For example, and I'm doing that, saying this case only because so much was said in the media. Snapdeal. We all heard about how the employees of Snapdeal lost a lot of money. And it wasn't just because of taxation. So when we're going to talk about ESOPs, is the only cleanup that you need to do with taxes, or that's just market driven, what happened like in the case of Snapdeal, so everybody should stay out of it?
I don't really think, Nayantara, that everybody should stay out of it, right? We are coming back to the basic premise of value creation. Employees often work very hard. Most of the stock option plans are vested over a period of 4 years. So between 4 and 6 years, and even some to as you mentioned earlier in your preface, that it can sometimes be a bonanza, creating millionaires and billionaires out of these stock options. These employees have more often than not spent about 8 to 12 years of their life at their company since the inception stages. Right, so when you're spending so much time, when you're putting so much blood, sweat, and tears, you deserve to be a part of the value that is being created, along with liquidity options, as both Vikas and Naganand had mentioned. But I think, as an employee, when you think about it, how do I want to participate in the value creation, right? And if I need the liquidity at the right period of time, there are various things that I need to think about. It also falls on the burden of the startup ecosystem and the companies themselves to educate the employees on how ESOPs work, how do they prepare to exercise their ESOPs, and give them the education on what the taxation laws are when they need to exercise. One, the vesting period is long enough for them to be able to bite into the ESOPs in the first place. And when they start exercising it, the liquidity can still be farther off, right? That is the disillusionment that gets created. So while you're mentioning the case of Snapdeal, I agree that created a lot of frustration, but it was not completely at the behest of the company, right? The employee has to take proper time and effort to really understand what options he's buying into, and not just buy what the street says about the market and buy into the story, which is most of the times rosy than not.
So let me now come to Rahul. We've got you as a founder over here as well. You've had so many rounds of funding, D series. That's why we've got you here today. So when you usually see that, you do see dilution take place, right? So when you do that, how are you protecting your employees' rights if you've used ESOPs at all? What are the issues that a founder like yourself has to grapple with?
So firstly, I think we have to realize that we are still a nascent startup ecosystem where not many companies have gone through the entire journey of IPO, and we have not created value as well as wealth for all the people who are working in the startup ecosystem. So it is very, very important for us to create an ecosystem where people start to value ESOPs, start to see as a non-linear wealth being generated for people. So one of the things we have done at Moglix from early on, I think the issue that we are talking about of the tax here, we do not convert the options into the shares, which many companies used to do in past, and therefore become eligible for tax liability. So even when the employees have quit Moglix, they continue to carry it as options, not converted to shares, where it becomes immediately taxable by the government. However, as some of the earlier panel members were saying, the most important thing to realize is that you cannot be taxing ESOP when an employee is just exercising it unless he has the ability to sell that ESOP further. So we should be only taxing him when he is selling the stock, not at the point of buying or exercising that stock. And that is a fundamental construct which needs to be there as part of the tax changes that should be there for startup ecosystem.
Because if I could come back to you, you're the tax expert, I'm going to try and put you in a corner. Indians are very good at jugaad. I think that's a very well established fact, and I'm sure the startup universe is also good with jugaad. So when it comes to ESOPs, what has we been seeing where it has become more employee friendly? I'm sure that has happened.
See, there are multiple schemes which are available and which can be designed to meet the specific requirements of the specific startup. depending on the time period when they expect that there will be a liquidity event happening. I think depending on the requirement, the scheme, a pure vanilla ESOP scheme could be altered and different kind of schemes could be there. For example, it could be a combination of stock purchase scheme as well, wherein outright shares are allotted, but again there is an event of taxability which gets triggered. Then there could be restrictive stock units as well, wherein cash element, which is appreciation, is given to them. And last but not the least, the vesting period could be strengthened enough or longer enough in order to meet the requirements. That is, the trigger point could be when the liquidity happens in the company. Otherwise, what happens is, say today, if an employee exercises options and converts them into shares, say the valuation is $10 million, tomorrow for whatever reasons and even if he pays the tax, and tomorrow for whatever reasons the valuation goes down, and at that point in time he has to sell the shares, probably there will be a loss which he will be incurring on the capital loss side, whereas he has already paid the taxes. So I think companies or the startups will have to look into multiple options and not just a plain vanilla stock option scheme in order to encourage and attract the employees. Therefore, different trigger points could be there in terms of stock options, or a variance of that in example is share purchase scheme or restrictive stock units, etc. So multiple combinations will work very well depending on the business requirements of a particular startup.
Naganand, if I could now come to you, you talked about how you came back from Boston, and this is of course a very important issue. But when you do see funding take place, when you do see all of that take place, investors coming on board and all of that, at that stage, how is it the ESOPs are managed?
So, are you talking about in India or in US?
India.
So I think this ESOP is still a quandary. It's still not mature in India yet. Even in our portfolio companies, we have more than 10 investments now. This is a constant point we struggle with as to when can one exercise, like to Rahul's point, do you want to even exercise it or and convert into shares or keep it as options? But if an employee leaves the company, what do you do with the options? I think there are a lot of unanswered questions because of the tax issue. So fundamentally, hence, if I were to ask one thing for the government to look into is make sure that you tax when somebody makes money, because that is the only way you are going to get confidence in the system. That's the only way you're going to attract people, by saying, look, compromise your salary because you're going to get these options and you have a potential to make a lot more money, and not extracting money from employees who are joining startups taking a salary cut. I think it has to be simple. To your point that, can someone do jugaad? There's always a probability that someone does jugaad, but I think in the overall interest of the community and the overall interest of the ecosystem, we have to design something that is easy for many employees to understand, and for the companies to implement something that is easy.
Of course. Simplification is of course what is absolutely needed. My question on jugaad was in the absence of simplicity, just to understand what is it that actually happens. Kshitij, I'm going to give you the final comment on this. Yes, ESOPs is at a nascent stage in India, but then so is the entire startup universe. It's also the currency which is used for attrition, right? So is it still a popular tool? Because just based on what everybody's saying, there seems to be a lot of confusion. It seems to be very not efficient, and seems to be very complex.
Yes, absolutely. I still think it's a very popular tool. And I'll come back to what I said earlier. It's the basic premise, hope, and the promise of value creation through hard work that the companies, the founders, and all the founding employees and the early employees of the companies go through, right? Reward is, of course, expected, and all of them have actually taken many tough choices, personally and professionally, to be able to slog through that journey. So I definitely think that value creation and equal participation, and providing equal participation to multiple members of the ecosystem, is definitely very important in this process of value creation, right? And I think it gets misunderstood far often, and that's due to lack of communication and lack of proper information. I think once we put enough effort into this as an ecosystem, all stakeholder levels, including employers and employees, it will start making a lot more sense. And as Vikas already mentioned, there are multiple avenues through which companies can choose to actually make the ESOP plans more attractive and provide some kind of liquidity to its employees as well. So I don't think it's still out of the question.
Gentlemen, so clearly a lot more that needs to be done, but it's early stages, and I can say the government does seem determined to boost entrepreneurship, to boost startups. There's still a lot wanting from Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, but I guess better late than never. With that, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us here on this special edition of Startup Central. And folks, with that, it's time for us to wrap up today's edition of Startup Central. Write into us, tell us what you thought of the show, what we shouldn't have done, what we did do, what you want to see, what you never want to see. And we'll see you same time tomorrow.